Hello everyone and welcome back to the start of another expansion of the Dungeon Lore series. As you may have surmised, today we'll be starting our way into the second expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, or in other words, Stormblood. Just before we start, I'd like to ask anyone watching if possible to comment for things they like about the series, or anything I could change for the better in terms of what's featured in these videos. It'd really help me out with future episodes and I'd love to hear what you think. Today though, let's get right into the first dungeon encountered on our new journey, the Sirensong Sea. Although little is known about the area of ocean said to lure soldiers and sailors to their deaths, it is known as a niche topic among those in Radzahan that the island was once chosen to have a prison erected upon its rocks. The idea at the time was to secure the dangerous prisoners by ensuring no chance of escape while staying at the facility. While the initial project, including the lighthouse necessary to guide the prison and security ships to the island, was successful, things soon began to turn sour. After a time, the regular ships sent to change the guard as well as supply them began to go missing, with Radzahan eventually deeming the project a failure due to the dangerous aspects of losing the ships and men and the resulting abandonment of the island. With the growing conflict reaching a peak with the events at Baelsar's Wall, the Eorzean Alliance as well as the Scions of the Seventh Dawn finally begin to make their moves with progressing into Giribania and into Garlean territory. The latter gathers within the Rising Stones to decide who should make the journey for the sake of diplomacy, with the group deciding to request Urianger stay behind to keep watch of the place. The rest of the group make their way to the fringes to rendezvous with Rauban and begin to make plans to meet the Alamegan resistance in order to form an official request of assistance in order to safely fight Garlemald. Lys leads the Warrior of Light and the Scions along to Rauga's Reach, the home base of the resistance, where they are met by Conrad and his fellows. After some discussions regarding the plans for the resistance, we agree to follow Monago and Mefred to the fringes and the peaks respectively, in order to assist with certain errands. In the fringes, we meet with Rauban once more to plan skirmishes with the Garlean troops, resulting in a second confrontation with Grimwart along with a special prototype Magitech armour. After the battle, Grimwart turns tail and flees once more, resulting in a resounding victory for the resistance. We return to Rauga's Reach and begin to follow Methrid to Alagana in the peaks, which also happens to be the small village Lys once grew up in. The difference between the determined attitude within the fringes and the attitude of the Alagana people is black and white however, as many here are old and tired, sick to death of having their young folks stirred up for war, only to never return. We discover that the Griffin, one Ilbert Fear, convinced many of the able-bodied peoples to follow in his cause, stirring up conflict with Garlemald to force the Alliance into war. Remembering this, Ragnfrid, an old man living within the village, practically turns Lys and the group away, not wanting anything more than to be freed of the torment of false promises. He does however recognise Lys, and although he is still unmoving with his attitude to help, he is glad to see her well. Outside the village, the group discuss a plan of action to try to convince the people of Alagana not to give up hope, and we begin by simply running favours for the people of the village. We collect a handful of creature parts, deliver a large sack of produce, and eventually find ourselves proceeding to a Kikian obelisk in order to rescue Werkarta, a man captured a short while ago by the Beastmen. We end up following Werkarta to the regular payment given by Alagana as tithes to Garlemald, and spot the bounty being collected by Fordola Rem Lupus. But surprisingly she turns out to be another Alamegan, working for the Garleans, and strikes Werkarta down when she deems the payment not enough. After this, we head back to Alagana where Ragnfrid apologises for his earlier behaviour, and the group is approached by a handful of younger citizens eager to join the resistance once more. After returning to Rauga's Reach, we catch a glimpse of the Imperial Palace in Alamigo proper, where Xenos Yegalvis plans to rat out the resistance, but not before killing a general that fled from a previous battle with them. Once again we see Fordola, who speaks up and shares a plan with Xenos to corner and strike down the leaders of the resistance for good. Back with the Scions, we visit Castrum Oriens once more, and discuss the new plans with Rauban, in which Conrad plans to form an attack on Castellum Veladina, the huge castrum upon a bridge across the river of the same name. As the castrum is a key position, controlling it would be a great advantage for the Alliance. As the plan begins moving into action, the Warrior of Light and the twins follow Pippin Tarapin along the cliffs of the fringes, until reaching a vantage point overlooking the Castellum. Just at that moment, cannon fire rings out, not from the Castellum, but from Rauga's Reach, and smoke begins to rise in the same direction. Aghast and shocked, the group quickly rush back to the base, but not before catching a devastating scene. Fordola and Mefrid locked in sword-fighting combat, and as Lys looks on, Fordola finds an opening and deals a vital blow. Mefrid, a shocked look in his eye, falls slowly to his knees and collapses, moving no more. Looking upon the fall of her comrade, Lys angrily begins battling Fordola, getting the upper hand until Xenos himself arrives on the scene. After catching one of Lys's fierce fists and throwing her back, he attempts to strike her down with one of his powerful blades, but Y'shtola manages to put herself between the two with a magical shield. This still is not enough to stem the blow, as Xenos pushes harder and destroys the barrier, cutting down Y'shtola in the process and having her fall, bloodied, to the ground. Back in the fringes, the Warrior of Light group runs into Kryl, who is escorting a handful of citizens away from the Reach. She explains the situation as best she can, and offers her own skills to accompany us back into the fray. We finally head into Rauga's Reach and begin wresting control away from the overwhelming Garlean forces, saving handfuls of troops and civilians alike. After rescuing more of the stragglers, we come face to face with Fordola, who stands guard over the captured Lys and the injured Y'shtola, and after a brief skirmish he chooses to retreat. Alphinaud and Kryl rush to heal Y'shtola and the injured resistance members, and Fordola calls to Xenos about the now freed prisoners. The Viceroy approaches the scene and dismisses Fordola to her injured men. He spares a glance to the injured allies, stating that they were not worth his time, before turning to face the Warrior of Light in single combat. Although the Warrior of Light faces their foe with the same confidence as always, soon into the battle it is clear that we are outmatched. Xenos uses his swords with great mastery, eventually becoming bored and using his concentrativity to blast us away with ease. Xenos then retreats from the Reach, leaving the injured Warrior of Light to lick their wounds. After recovering ourselves, we move over to Kryl, who still lies over Y'shtola, and she shouts for us to assist her, eventually managing to stabilize her. After the humiliating defeat suffered at the hands of Xenos and his men, the Warrior of Light assists the resistance with their wounded, as well as their dead. Mefrid's body lay in the open where he fell, and we collect his charm and subsequently deliver it to Comrade, who understands at once when he receives the item. He tells us how Mefrid was the kind of man to only put his own life at risk for the cause, and never anyone else's, and grieves that he may now never lead the resistance to their freedom. Alphinaud puts in a wise word that those who may yet live must be looked after, even with the loss of such a great man. The Warrior of Light proceeds onwards, collecting medical supplies for the remainder of the populace being transported to Castrum Oriens for safety, and the carriage taking the injured persons heads off with Lys and Kryl as a guard. Soon after, the rest of the able scions also make the journey and begin discussing their situation in full. Lys mourns Mefrid and curses the fact that his killer, Fordola, was an Alamegan turned against her fellows. Comrade meanwhile speaks with Roban and confesses that the defeat felt this day was too much for the resistance to bear, and that their fight is over. He too laments the troops under Garlean control that contain Alamegan soldiers, turned against their homeland. Comrade seems resolved in his decision until an injured Monargo steps forth, shouting that their fight mustn't be in vain, and Roban agrees with her words. Although the group as a whole shudder to think that Xenos may be next in line to the throne, Alphinaud and the Warrior of Light put forth the plan to take the fight away from Girobania, and begin an assault on a second front in Doma. Comrade sees merit in the plan, and the remaining scions all agree to accompany the small group to Hingashi to oversee the spark of revolution to take place. The scions quickly discuss both a means to travel over the vast sea to the far east, to which Alphinaud implies a previously put into motion scheme, and they agree that Kryl should remain in the fringes to watch over Y'shtola and be a central point of communication should the need arise. Following Alphinaud, we rendezvous with him once more in the upper decks of Limsa Lominsa, where the others question the means as to which he means to procure a ship for the journey. To Alazay's dismay, Captain Carverlane of the Kraken's Arms pirates appears with Tataru in tow, ready to offer his services for the voyage. At first, however, he seems unconvinced of a worthy reason to make the voyage, as no profit can be reasonably seen, but Tataru spins words of alluring treasure in the form of a missing member of House Durandare, one of the 4 high houses of Ishgard. It is rumoured that the Lord Durandare would pay a king's ransom for news of his missing son, rumoured to have travelled the very same sea about 20 years prior. Laughing, Carverlane agrees, but only promises safe passage to the far eastern city of Kugane, due to the turmoil within Doma at present. To try and bring themselves up to speed with happenings in the Far East, Lys and the Warrior of Light visit the Rising Stones to speak to the other Doman scions and allies there. learning from them that Garlemald easily swept through their land with Xenos at the helm, and that the throne now lies empty except for the Garlean leader left there to rule over the Domans. We take Lys back to Limsa Lominsa to meet our allies and prepare to board the Misery, and Urianger appears at the dock to wish us well. He bestows an ominous sounding prophecy upon us, and hopes that we can use his wisdom to move well in our endeavours. He also gifts Alisaie her new weapon, a glowing rapier designed to flow better with her ether than the sword she was previously using. Carvalane calls to the Scions to begin boarding, as the wind remains in their favour, and the group says their farewells to Urianger and board the boat to head for Doma. We see the group aboard the ship enjoying their cruise, and Carvalane praises the good weather and leads us to our quarters. Soon after, we see the Scions discussing things below deck, when suddenly the ship trembles, and a deckhand bursts through the doors to alert the captain of some odd occurrences happening above ground, with the deadening of the wind and a sudden heavy fog rolling in. Additionally, other sailors appear to be hearing things that shouldn't be there, so we accompany the captain to the deck where we discover that the Misery is slowly being pulled off course by some unknown factor, with even the secret cerulean engines being unable to activate to correct it. Carvalane also explains that the things being seen by his men may be those souls of women that were lost or had died at sea, and their unresting spirit attempts to lure men and their ships to their doom. Alisaie puts forth the name of Sirens, which scares Alphinaud, but she quickly rallies and decides to simply allow the boat to be pulled so as to deal with the culprit wherever they arrive. The captain agrees, and we prepare to face the murky ocean's foes as the ship pulls itself to depths unknown. As we continue proceeding through the mist, a bluish light appears far off in the distance, and we see many tentacled foes land upon the ship. The party defeats 2 sets of these foes before the Misery finally crash lands against a rocky formation, among several other shipwrecks. The Scion group descends the slope and begins clearing out the inhabiting sea creatures and oddities found there, using the broken ships as makeshift passageways to proceed to the next set of rocks. Just past one of the wrecks we find a foe known as the Reflection of Carlabos, a scorpion-like creature. This creature is presumably the descendant of an extremely similar creature simply known as Carlabos, once fought within the depths of Sestasha after the pirates there began making deals with Leviathan. The creature even uses the familiar tail screw ability, dropping any who stand in its radius to extremely dangerous levels of health should it connect. After defeating the Reflection, the party proceeds onwards across another wreck to reach Spey Rock, where, with the eerie light appearing in the distance, another creature known as Lugat awaits. This creature appears to have great mastery over water-aspected abilities, as to be expected when this far out to sea, and spouts water in various ways to assault the party. Hydro-Ball forces the party to come together to even out the damage, while Overtow bursts out waves of water to damage the group as a whole. When injured, the creature uses Sea Swallows All, a dangerous ability that pulls the party directly underneath itself, which it then follows up with Concussive Oscillation, a heavy wind-based ability that greatly damages any caught within the blast. After dodging the attack, as well as its amorphous applause, which assaults half the arena with its tentacles, the creature falls and the party can proceed onwards. We move on up to the crest of the hill with the blue light slowly coming into better focus, and we can make out the structure the light is emanating from. The next area to traverse, the Teeth and the Whipjacks, contains a countless number of shipwrecks lost to the sharp rocks, fog and alluring voices from within the islands. Thankfully, however, the wrecks are in close enough density that the party can use them as a makeshift walkway to reach the far side of the island. Although the enemies here are more of the inhabitants of the islands and surrounding waters, one ghostly ship across the way stands eerily waiting, seemingly fully intact. As the party boards it, we discover it to be the Jane Guy, but unlike the other ships, the crew appears to have been consumed and turned into undead beings, attacking the party on sight. After defeating the deckhands and the skipper of the ship, we reach the other side of the Whipjacks and enter the Warden's Delight, where another human-turned amalgamation awaits. The Governor, a large ghostly undead creature, attacks the party. This creature is presumed to be the animated remains of the man that once held governance over the prison island for the short time it was active, but after not receiving additional aid or replacements for his men, the man succumbed too to the alluring call of the siren, resulting in his current state. The undead form uses various dark magics upon the party, beginning with Shadow Flow, summoning lines of shadows upon the floor, damaging and making anyone stood in them more vulnerable to magic. After this he uses Enter Night, pulling a party member close and forcing them to run away from him to break the spell, or suffer yet more magic vulnerability. Intermittently, the Governor uses Bloodburst, dealing damage to the entire party, even more so if the shadow magics affected a party member previously. After a second shadow flow in which the Governor calls his staff to also spout yet more shadows, the Governor too falls and the party moves into the Isle of the Dead. This sheltered area seems to have been the main hub for the prison cells used while the place was active. Unfortunately for the occupants, however, they seem to have simply died away within their cells, as they too were rotted and reanimated as the undead. In addition, both the prison's warden as well as his faithful hound both patrol the place, and when encountered they unleash the prisoners from their cells to swarm the party. After managing to defeat the warden, we head out once more into heavy rain, finding more of the warden's hounds which attack on sight. As we head through towards the now visible lighthouse emanating the blue light, we see more of a similar coloured light emitting from the nearby driftwood and surroundings, and as we reach the final gate to the lighthouse, a bonfire of the same blue flame erupts into a wraith-like creature, yet another spirit of a captive once held there, but this time stripped of their flesh. The creature attempts to lure party members close with a seductive scream, but this can be prevented by interrupting the channeling of the ability. Finally, after the captive falls, we reach the glowering krauts, where the source of the sailor's torment, as well as our current predicament, awaits. An eerie creature, graceful yet horrifying, known as Lorelei, descends from the upper reaches of the lighthouse to face the party, screaming as it prepares to attack. The siren claims to have lured us close on purpose, and prepares to use their unique powers of luring upon the group. Morbid Advance forces party members to move in the direction they are facing, while Morbid Retreat causes the opposite to happen. While these abilities are not intrinsically dangerous, Lorelei also calls forth puddles of siren tears, which damage and inflict bleeding upon party members should they go awry with their forced walks. When injured, the creature uses virgin tears, and tells us that if we will not serve willingly, then we shall suffer instead. They surround the area with the tears, giving much less room to maneuver as they prepare their morbid advances and retreats once more. After evading the dangerous puddles, the tears fade and the siren is defeated. This causes the rain outside to falter and clear, as well as the blue light from above to fade, finally freeing the Sirensong Sea from its well-known curse. Afterwards, the Scions and the Warrior of Light back out of the lighthouse and meet Carverlane, happy to see the problem has been resolved, and announces that the repairs on the Misery are complete. Alphino notes that he could go without another ghost story, and the party returns to their own ship to complete the voyage to Kugane. And that's the end of the story and lore for the Sirensong Sea. A rocky outcrop turned prison island, in which a deceased siren made its home to allure and turn undead those unlucky enough to sail or travel within reach of its song. With the island cleared, the Scions prepare to face the turmoil in Doma, as well as find their missing Doman allies. But yet more betrayal and difficulties lie in wait for them, with many watchful eyes noting their arrival in the Hingashi port city. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more Final Fantasy XIV lore, and I'll see you next time for Shisui of the Violet Tides.